Life is a really strange and unpredictable thing. You can never guess what it may suddenly decide to throw at you. I sometimes think about the good old days, those quiet and peaceful days that I spent together with my family, completely unaware to what was truly going on in the world I lived in. Those days are now nothing but a bittersweet memory. Why, you may ask? When a person truly cares for a friend, a family member, or a lover, he will do anything in his power to make sure that no harm shall befall them, even if that may cost him his very humanity in the process. This isn't the story of a boy who dreamed of becoming a hero of justice. That's someone else's story. This is the story of a boy who simply wished to protect his family and loved ones, but came at a heavy price, one that I later came to regret. Everything changed when I accepted that offer, and shouted those two words. Chapter 1. For one's family. Warm. My face feels warm. My eyes twitched slightly as I opened them, but I immediately shut them back closed as the light was too powerful. Opening them slower this time, I was greeted by the warm light of a brand new day that found itself in my room through the nearby window. I got up from my bed, scratching the back of my head, and took a look in the nearby mirror. Even though my vision is a bit blurry from just getting up, I could still see how messy my hair was this morning. Yawning tiredly, I made my way towards the bathroom. If there was one thing that I needed right now, was a nice cold shower to properly wake me up from the half-asleep state I'm in. I made my way to the door and quietly entered the bathroom. Inside, I was greeted by the form of a woman. It was Sela, my caretaker, who was apparently standing in front of the sink, wearing only a towel around her slender body. Her pale skin seemed to glisten from the bullets of water that were trailing down her lithe figure. Oh shit. My mouth almost hit the floor from how much it was hanging. Sela's face went red, which really accentuated her color considering how fair her skin was. I tried to think of a way to apologize and diffuse the current situation before I'd get my head bashed into a wall yet again by my rather prone to violence caretaker. Morning, Sela. I stuttered, my voice cracking a bit and sounding embarrassed. Of course, me being me, I ended up bungling it by saying something different than what I had in mind. I took a good look at her face, taking note of the expression on it. Sela wasn't mad, not at all, she was utterly furious. You pervert. Her scream rang out and could probably be heard throughout the entire neighborhood. It wasn't the first time this had happened. Later, after my run-in with Sela, I was in the kitchen enjoying my breakfast. While still good, I thought that the food could use a bit more salt though. I stopped eating when I heard someone else enter the kitchen. Guten Morgen, I was casually greeted in German by my other caretaker Liesrit, or Liz as I and the other members of my family like to call her. Morning, Liz. I replied tiredly, my face still feeling sore from the previous encounter with Sela. Shuru, what happened to your nose? She asked stoically as she stared intensely at the bandage put over it. I was personally wondering if I should tell her that Sela's roundhouse kicked me in the middle of my face so hard that my silhouette got imprinted in the bathroom wall, but I dropped that idea. I knew that mentioning the fact that I saw Sela almost naked would only result with another beating from said aforementioned lady, so I decided to keep it to myself. Single quote. Nothing happened, I replied with a rather tired and dry tone. Liz just nodded and took a nearby seat, as calm as always. Sometimes I find it really hard to believe that Sela and Liz are actually sisters. While it was obvious enough to notice the relation from their looks, their respective personalities were as different as night and day to each other. On one hand, Sela possessed a very strict and serious personality, while Liz in contrast was very easygoing and carefree. I sometimes wished I could get along with Sela as easily as I get along with Liz. While I do get along with Sela for the most part, unfortunately she tends to be rather severe with me. I heard some humming sounds coming from the stairs. There's only one person who hums like that. Morning. We were greeted by my cheerful stepmom as she entered the room and took a seat at the table. Her eyes immediately landed on me. My, Shuru, did you have another morning accident with Sela? She asked me in a teasing manner, her eyes sparkling as she saw the current state my face was in. Irisville, or Erie is Dad, and I like to call her as my adoptive mother. I can somewhat understand why my dad fell in love with her. Besides being kind and lively, she is probably one of the most beautiful women I have ever seen in my life. The only thing is I sometimes get headaches from her rather childish and quirky personality, that and her daily teasing. And no, I muttered while avoiding eye contact. If there was one thing I can't stand, it's teasing, especially by my stepmom. Erie immediately saw my reaction, a smirk forming on her lips, a smirk that made me want to run away, but for some reason her eyes were all set on Sela instead of me. Who? Sela, you won't find a boyfriend if you treat men like you treat poor Shuru. Those words struck Sela really hard. She flinched as if an imaginary knife had just stabbed her. While her face didn't show too much of a reaction, the glass that she was washing shattered in her grip. I'm perfectly fine without a boyfriend, she commented with a tint of red appearing on her cheeks. This was one of the many taboos of the house, reminding Sela that she doesn't have a boyfriend. You've been saying that for years, Sela. Liz replied to her casually. Please stop adding more gas on the fire, Liz, I mentally begged her as I looked over at Sela. I gulped. There was a throbbing vein visible on her forehead. Something akin to a dark aura began emanating and surrounding her body. Its presence sent shivers down my spine. Shut up, Liz, she growled back at her sister. Sela may not be able to stand up against Erie, who is the self-proclaimed god of this household, but there's no way in hell that Sela will simply stand by and let Liz talk shit about her. I broke into a cold sweat, knowing my luck I'd no doubt somehow get caught in the crossfire if things continued to escalate. I sighed, just your typical morning at the Emma Einsborn household. I noticed that there were some people missing at the table. Excluding Dad, who is almost always away from home with work, there were two people in particular that were missing. Say, I wanted to ask, but where's Ilya and Miu? I asked Erie. Normally my little sister and cousin were up by now. But then again, Miu doesn't actually live with us. Rather, she stays over here when her mom Maya, who is basically an aunt to Ilya and I, is gone on away on business trips with our dad. I could swear I just saw something like a small sparkle appear in Erie's eye. I know that look. Oh, is Shuru-chan missing his little sister and cousin? How cute. She told me in a sweet yet teasing voice. I swear she's having way too much fun for her age. Sela sighed. Something tells me that I wasn't the only one feeling tired from Erie's antics, but went on to answer my question. The two of them left earlier to meet up with their classmates. Oh, I see. I nodded as I took a bite of my fish, hoping that this would temporarily put an end to Erie and her shenanigans. We all stopped eating when we heard the doorbell. Sela was the one who went to see who it was. When she returned, she had a number of envelopes in her hand. I guess it must have been the mailman. She started to shuffle through them, yet stopped and narrowed her eyes on a particular one. Shuru, you have a letter. Letter? I asked, confused as I took the letter from Sela. Just who would send me a letter? I eagerly opened it. Inside I found a piece of paper and began reading its contents. A key to awakening a miracle, for those who desire it. I closed the letter as my left eye twitched badly and resisted the urge to sigh. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of weird joke this was supposed to be. I decided to just roll with it and check the contents in the envelope. Inside I found a card that resembled an old overused tarot card, but it had one main problem. Single quote, dot. Just a blank card. I muttered as I narrowed my eyes on it. Yep, just a blank card. The backside had a design similar to that of a tarot card, but the side that was supposed to have a picture was whiter than my mother's hair. Okay, this must be one of the weirdest pranks I've ever seen. I deduced as I simply put the card away in my pocket. Erie, ignoring my confusion, took a look at her watch, widened her eyes and immediately clapped her hands in surprise. Era Shuru, look at the time. You will be late for school if you don't hurry. Want Mama to give you a ride in her car? She vibrantly chirped. I froze immediately as the words from her mouth hung in the air. Those two words. Eerie and car, those two words made me and everyone else present beside Eerie shiver in complete dread. There are some things in this world that must never meet or be mixed together. Water and electricity, bleach and ammonia, alcohol and pills, but among all Eerie must never be put in a driver's seat, period. And no, it's okay, I will simply run to school. I muttered slowly, trying to literally not scream in fear like a little girl. Eerie tilted her head slightly and put a finger on her lower lip in confusion as she stared at me. How can a woman her age make such a cute face and be completely oblivious? Why would you do that when I can just drive you there? She asked innocently. The dread I felt went up a few ranks and became crippling fear. I could feel bullets of sweat forming on my face. Why, you don't have to bother yourself. I tried to desperately turn down her offer and make her change her mind. It's no big deal, she chirped happily. Eerie's smile was radiant, bright, and filled with motherly love as she stared at me. Yet the image before me only served to make my blood run cold and fill me with terror. I didn't have a mirror to check, but something tells me that my face at this moment probably went from being pale to becoming a rather bluish color. My eyes drifted towards Liz and Sella, whose faces were full of sympathy and remorse. I didn't know how I currently looked, but I could only speculate it was probably something close to a puppy who was about to be sent to the pound. Eerie seemed to find my reaction rather confusing as she put her index finger over her chin and began making a thinking sound. Eventually she straightened her pose and tapped her palm with her fist, coming up with her own realization for my behavior, a small blush taking over her face as her hands clasped onto her cheeks. Oh, are you perhaps embarrassed to be seen by your classmates with your young and gorgeous mother? She deduced merrily while fluttering her eyelashes at me. ... Sometimes I can't help but wonder what was odder. My stepmother's logic, or that I managed to resist the urge to facepalm myself after hearing it. Madam, you won't be able to drive him to school since you have an appointment in exactly 15 minutes. Sella explained calmly. To my luck and surprise, salvation came from the last person I was expecting. Eerie looked at her for a few seconds, blinking confusedly, until the realization hit her shortly. Oh, I completely forgot. Thanks, Sella. She stormed out the room, leaving an imaginary trail of dust behind her. I let out a sigh of relief. Sella, I would hug you right now, but I won't, since you would most likely break my bones afterwards. I took a look at my watch. Now I really was running late. I jumped out of my seat, grabbed my backpack, and began running towards school. Gotta hurry, I told myself as I ran through the neighborhood. Man, if I'm late, Kuzuki-sensei won't be happy, granted not that he is happy at any other time to begin with. I was quickly approaching the school gates, pumping my legs as quickly as they would carry me. The moment I was near the entrance, I began hearing some screams. The kind you hear when a girl catches a man peeking in on them when they change. Unfortunately, it was a scream most students at my school were quite familiar with. As I entered the school grounds, my suspicions were quickly confirmed. In the distance I could see the girls of the Kendo Club, armed with their respective wooden swords, running after our school's famous, or more precisely infamous, perverted trio. Yep. Just another common occurrence at our school, though I can't help but wonder why those three haven't been suspended or expelled for their actions yet. I mean, once or twice they may get away with it, but I lost count on how many times they were caught peeping. Either someone with a high position in our school is backing them, or they have some kind of perverted deity watching over them. While I don't have any personal grudge against them, I don't enjoy seeing them peep around and troubling others. That aside, for some reason I can't help but feel sorry for those guys. Their actions, due to their unbridled libido, have ruined their reputations for probably all of high school. I mean, I'm a guy like they are, but I don't go around repeatedly peeping on women in public or mention what I like to do to certain girls loud enough for everyone to hear. Thank God I didn't get too friendly with them when I first started school here. I might have turned into a pervert as well. Oh, would you look at that, they caught them. Ouch. I know that they were peeking, but still, do the girls really need to hit them that hard below the belt? It hurts just to look at them. Well, on a side note, they are lucky that the girls didn't use Fujimura-sensei's Tora Shinai. I swear there's something wrong about her tiger-striped wooden sword, it's like it's cursed or something. Wonder how the members of the Kendo club can't notice the dark and scary aura that their club advisor's weapon of choice gives off. I made my way to my class. Everything was pretty normal. Kiba was getting a lot of attention from our female classmates, while Saji and most of the guys were giving him death glares as usual. I can't help but wonder why though. It's not like Kiba did anything to warrant such a hostile reaction. Half of the day went by like they always do. Time ticking by as school slowly progressed, classmates arguing with each other, and teachers complaining about the declining rate of students' morals and so on. Right now I was enjoying a quiet lunch in the cafeteria, or at least normally I would be. When I ran to school this morning I actually forgot part of my lunch on the kitchen table, leaving me with only rice at the moment. Great. Hi there, Emiya. A girlish voice greeted me. Well, there goes my peace and quiet. I turned my head around towards the person and saw who it was. Oh, Mitsuzuri. I greeted her back casually. Mitsuzuri Ayako, my friend and the captain of the archery club. Ayako was a rather tomboyish girl possessing a cool beauty, but overall a nice girl that was easy to get along with. She sat down in front of me, which allowed me to take a look at her tray. I couldn't help but wonder if all girls in sports eat the same amount as her. I mean, come on, what kind of high school girl eats curry rice, miso soup, pork ramen, and sandwiches in one meal yet manages to have a well-formed figure like her? Mitsuzuri stared at me, more particularly my face. She gave me a rather surprised look. Wow, who did that number on your nose? She asked, her face painted with curiosity. I sighed. I really hated when I had to explain my accidental wounds, as it was really embarrassing. No one dangerous. I answered dryly. I wasn't technically lying, since Sella can't be considered a dangerous person, at least for most people besides me anyway. She narrowed her eyes and gave me something that I could only describe as a playful smile. I see, Sella-san, huh? I almost choked on the rice I was eating. How did you know? She closed her eyes and shrugged her shoulders tiredly. I honestly lost count on how many times she has clobbered you over the years. I could feel my cheeks burn as I averted my gaze. Hey, it's not like I'm doing something to deserve getting my face beaten. Her smile widened a few inches as she stared at me. Really? So those accidents you keep having are unintentional? At that remark I wanted to find a hole and bury my head in it. The famous accidents of Emiya Shuru. Some people wonder if some kind of being from a higher plan had cursed me or if I'm just straight out unlucky. After all, how could a guy like me always accidentally get into situations where he ends up touching, feeling, rubbing, and groping the intimate parts of a girl the way I do? Though from what I heard there are also a lot of guys who are jealous of me and my accidents for some unknown reason. Oh, of course it is. I muttered. I could feel my face getting flushed. Mitsuzuri on the other hand was displaying an expression saying, "You don't say." With her smile. So you take no pleasure whatsoever when they happen? I hate teasing. I really hate it. Oh, of course I don't. I muttered bashfully, though I had to admit there were some times when I actually did enjoy it. Oh come on, I'm a healthy male high school student. Her smile faded and just sighed instead. Now that's disappointing. I blinked a few times, not understanding what she meant. Nothing. She replied before she continued to dig into her food. Girls sure can be weird sometimes. I tried to get back to my food, but I felt an intense stare fixed on me. I looked back at Mitsuzuri and noticed her eyes were locked onto mine. All her cheerfulness from a few moments ago completely vanished, and was replaced by a very serious look. Say Shuru, she began. My senses were all on edge when I heard her call me by my given name. It may not seem like a big deal, but the only times Mitsuzuri called me by it was when I did something seriously stupid or if I am in trouble. I'm really hoping it's the former and not the latter at this moment. You know, I've been meaning to ask you. Are you ever going to return to the archery club? She asked me, her voice filled with concern. I took a second and thought about it. I'm not sure. I told her honestly, I was part of the archery club in my first year of high school, but I gave up on it when I began my second year. Look, I know maybe you don't feel like you have anything left to learn since you always score a perfect hit no matter the situation, but you could try and do it to have fun with the other members. She told me softly as she gave me a weak smile. Yeah, that was why I left. I didn't give up because I couldn't do it or didn't have any talent for it. I gave up since I didn't have anything left to learn. I may have missed the first 1 or 2 shots, but afterwards I learned how to properly take my stance and apply all the steps. I never missed the target. No matter what, I always hit it every single time. I guess I just didn't have anything left to keep me there. I don't know if returning would change anything, but I honestly don't know what I want. I didn't want to lie to her, but maybe I'll give it a thought. Try and think about it. I'm not necessarily telling you this because you're good at it, but try to have some fun. I mean, you don't seem to have any desire for anything. She smiled gently at me, but it was a smile filled with concern. Was I really making her worry that much about me without realizing it? I couldn't help but feel rather awkward. Now that I think about it, Mitsuzuri did seem rather distant with me after I left the club. She must have been upset that I just left like that. My hand instinctively reaching for the back of my head and began scratching my hair. Man, if I'm getting pity from a classmate, it must be really bad. I admitted with a dry chuckle to my old friend. You know, Emiya, she began, as our eyes met. I didn't like the way she looked at me. I don't think I've ever heard you laugh. My mind stopped. Her words struck me hard. My eyes widened slowly as I realized that she was right. In all the years that we've known each other, there's wasn't even a single time when I saw you laugh. Sometimes I think that when you smile, you just do it as a reflex rather than an honest smile. Her words. I never thought about it, but she is right. I actually don't remember the last time when I laughed. Have I ever actually laughed since the incident? My family tried to help me get over my problems, but it was useless. I couldn't get treated. I know they care about me, and I also care about them, so it's because of that I tried to appear fine. That way they didn't have to worry about me anymore. I would smile and pretend to be okay, but in truth, I was empty. No, I am still empty, without any true sense of self. Look, she began again, breaking me out of my thoughts. If you ever feel the need to talk to someone, I am always willing to listen. I wonder, just what did I do to deserve a friend like her? She is far too good for me, but still it feels somewhat reassuring to know that there's someone my age that I could talk to. Thanks, Ayako. I could feel the edges of my mouth curling upwards in a small smile, though it feels more bitter than happy.